Former Fox News anchor Megyn Kelly gave a very discouraged monologue on her show after Tuesday's election results.
The conservative commentator had harsh words for the Republican Party as it lost to Democrats in every major election, including 2 gubernatorial races in New Jersey and in Virginia. Let's watch.
I realize these were blue states. I don't care. The margins are so large, and Republicans lost across the board, everywhere, in every race. There's really no good news. Literally, the only good news is how radical the Democrats are and how Mamdani will now be the poster child for every Republican to use against his opponent. I mean, they'll all have to explain where they stand on Mamdani as he wrecks New York.
Kelly continued, saying that the GOP needs to figure out how to win elections without Donald Trump's name on the ballot.
The Republicans like to lose. They enjoy losing. They enjoy when they are embattled and in a losing position and complaining. They love it. They do it really well. Less good at winning, especially when Donald Trump is not there to get them over the line. The Republican Party is not strong. Donald Trump is strong. Republicans don't know how to win. They don't know who to run. They don't know what to do when daddy's not there to fly them across the finish line. And that's just been so obvious.
Similar sentiments were echoed in a way in an article by the New York Times, which posited that Republicans are in a lose-lose situation when it comes to Trump. The article reads, quote, "If Republicans break with Mr. Trump, they risk a public flogging that could depress turnout with the party's base or cost them in future primary races. But if they defend him, they energise Democrats and independents who are furious with his handling of the federal government and increasingly disenchanted with his stewardship of the economy."
On social media, some conservatives pointed blame at Megyn Kelly and other prominent conservative media figures after recent turmoil on the right caused by Tucker Carlson's controversial interview with Nick Fuentes. I talked about that in my radars all week. YouTuber Brandon Tatum writes, "Funny, she didn't mention Tucker and others who have the biggest podcast and influence in America, not mentioning anything about voting. He's the one who platformed a Nazi sympathizer, tanking the Republican Party. Now it's everyone else's fault." I don't really think the current feuding on the right is a large factor in the story of their loss. In fact, I don't think it's a factor whatsoever. That could change in the future. To the extent this feuding on the right is kind of related to online culture battles and also foreign policy in some way, I don't think that was in the top 50 concerns of voters.
Yep.
It's whether you talk to voters in New York or you talk to voters in Virginia, or you talk to voters wherever they are, their concerns are the same concerns they had a year ago when Donald Trump beat Kamala Harris and by extension Joe Biden, which is the economy. Republicans can try to argue they've made some improvements. Inflation is still at 2% or higher. I would argue that the Republicans' embrace of tariffs is hurting the economy, and voters are not happy about that and are very dissatisfied with Trump, with that behavior in particular. And so this is sort of a self-inflicted wound. And if they could get it back on track and really prioritize the economic problems people are facing, these would be winnable races. And because they're not, that's why they're losing. It's not the feuding on the right. It's not even really Trump personally, because he won last time. And it's true that when he's on the ballot, Republicans do better. And they haven't really figured out how to win without him. But to my mind, it's a loss of focus on fixing the economy.
Yeah,
that's my view.
Right. No, I think that's fair enough. I disagree with Megyn Kelly, as I almost always do. But in this instance, the idea that Republican turnout was somehow depressed because people were picking different sides in a sort of battle centred on Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson and critics of them, that seems to make no sense at all to me. I do think the economy is the large issue, but the other thing where maybe we disagree here, the other point that I took exception to in what Kelly said was this idea that if Trump were to get more involved or whatever, they would have been fine. Trump isn't that popular in the polling average that they do at Decision Desk HQ. He's about 11 points underwater. He dominates the political narrative to such an extent that it sometimes slightly obscures the fact that his approval ratings are really pretty bad. And I think you could argue that in some of these races, like for example in both New Jersey and Virginia, both Spanberger and Maggie Sherrill did really quite well with Latino voters, for example. Now, I think it is completely plausible to argue that one of the reasons for that is and was the Trump immigration policy. Not only a rhetorical hardline, but some of these like very, very heavy-handed ICE raids and other things that we see. Seems reasonable to assume that the Latino population writ large would have pretty serious issues with that.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I have issues with it, as you know. I'm not supportive of the most extreme version of Stephen Miller's immigration policy, for instance. I think, focusing on deporting violent criminals is good policy. Just raiding every, hardware store parking lot is not good policy. And maybe that is affecting Latinos who are otherwise supportive of deporting, again, criminal illegal immigrants, but not just like targeting their population at large. That's plausible to me. I don't know that that's the case, but it might be. And of course, that affects the economy too, as I've tried to argue that we need workers, and mass deportations of people who are working, who are playing some role in the economy, and then you'll get other types of ideological MAGA people saying, no, but we want Americans to do those jobs anyway. I'm like, okay, but they'll do it for a higher price, and that raises the price of everything, and that's the number one complaint of voters, is that everything costs too much. So can we apply a little bit more thought to this, is what I would say. You're right that Trump's own popularity is way down, so I don't know. Without him, the Republican Party seems to do more poorly in elections, which was contradictory to, I think, the narrative early on in the first Trump administration, where it's like, well, if they could have anyone less Trumpian, they could win Arizona, they could win Georgia, they could win but Trump keeps foisting on them unpopular candidates. But Trump himself, inspires turnout of low propensity voters who are voting for Trump and then vote for other Republicans.
I agree that is...
It's complicated.
It is. I agree that is a complicated and unusual dynamic. What broadly seems to happen is elections in the Trump era, the opponents of Trump are motivated, whatever happens, whether he's on the ballot or not, because even if he's not on the ballot, they're like, yes, screw that guy, and then we'll vote for the Democrats to send a message. But the people who like him, or some sliver within the people who like him, will only come to the polls for him personally, and don't just vote for a generic Republican candidate to show back in for him. And, that part of it isn't that unusual. During the Obama presidency, Obama had terrible difficulty turning out Democratic voters for midterm elections who were plainly willing to vote for him and give him 2 terms.
This is an off-year election. One of these states we're talking about principally is Virginia. Virginia often just has switched a bunch of times who's in charge, governor, but then otherwise is a solidly pretty blue state, and a state of government workers, or where government workers are a disproportionate part of the population. The suburbs of DC's suburbs are in Virginia. Those are Virginia voters, people who are not getting paid right now because of a shutdown under a Republican administration. Which is to say that there was a lot going against the Virginia Republicans specifically. I think, and Winsome Earl Sears was not the greatest candidate. So I don't really think anything that happened in Virginia is that unusual.
But New Jersey was more.
New Jersey was, because I thought,
but most people thought it was going to be narrower.
I thought it would be closer, and I thought he was a pretty good candidate. Honestly, kind of a compelling figure. Saw a video of his son who serves in the military, surprising him and joining him on the campaign trail. It was, this kind of stuff that appeals to people.
And he was trying to thread the Trump needle as well. He certainly was supportive of Trump, but he's not by demeanor a sort of a particularly Trumpian character, but certainly was trying to stay in alignment with them to get those votes and expand on them. And that didn't happen. Maggie Sherrill won by a very, very comfortable, double-digit margin.
Right now, J.D. Vance is sitting down with political experts and think, how do we get me elected without Trump's name on the ballot? That is what they're going to be talking about for the next 3 years.
Yeah, could be a challenge for sure.
Could be. More to talk about on Rising. Stay with us.